Yeah, I mean, to continue a little bit, I guess since we got cut off there again, but you were talking a little bit about the kind of the roundup of this year's season and the potential that is minimizing all the crop circles in England, and that this potentially now might, I guess, be taken to another level, or some other phenomena begin to pop up. Any ideas about that?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, obviously, I couldn't speculate on what might replace it, only because crop circles were themselves this beautiful and entirely unexpected surprise. Sort of nobody 15, 20 years ago might have thought that we would see glyphs, patterns of the kind of complexity appearing in our fields, which have grey star fields for so long. And I must say, I'm quite evangelical about them, because they're simply inherently beautiful, and they have always given me so much uplift. I find something very reassuring looking at those things. So I couldn't tell you what's going to replace them.
Sure.
I can say I don't think it's going to die entirely, and I think we're probably always going to see some circular action in Great Britain, and I think we're probably going to see increasingly more in Europe. But all I can say, and again, I've spoken to a number of people on this who are also quite intuitive, and all of them pretty much reporting the same thing: the sense that maybe now in this country, it's starting to ebb a little bit.
I mean, and it hasn't been that long as far. There are actually, come to think of it now, there are actually records of this dating back to
like 20 years now.
Sure.
In fact, I'm sure experienced crop. In fact, it's nearer 25, 28 years. I think right back to the very start of the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. So it has been.
Sort of looking back to about 2000. I mean, you only need to look at Lucy Pringle's magnificent work that she's done there. An extremely dedicated researcher. And you can see most of her archives on cropcircleconnector.com, and there are other sites. I think Lucy Pringle has her own site, which I strongly recommend people check out.
Yeah.
And sort of going back maybe 7-8 years, and even and certainly 2003, as I recall, 2005 was also an excellent year. There were these incredible sort of Mayan calendar type glyphs, which got people excited 2 years ago. And of course, talking about the Mayans, that brings us back there again, doesn't it?
It does.
It does. So, and like here is my take on 2012, and I think it's kind of interesting. But I've talked about the end of days earlier and Greenwich, and I tried to stress the fact that I don't believe that this is going to be a physical thing.
Sure.
I'm not expecting that we're all going to be vaporized or drown because of sort of Al Gore's Live Earth hasn't quite worked, things like that.
Sure.
I don't see it that way. But the interesting thing is that there's you, there's me. There's my friend Ellis C. Taylor, who I have to get in there because his work is truly exceptional. And of course there are hundreds of thousands of us globally who are focusing on this date now.
Yeah.
And even if it's purely a matter of, even if it's simply a matter of magical consciousness at work, well, that is in itself tremendously powerful. Isn't it?
That's right.
I don't necessarily expect anything is going to happen. It's gradual.
Yeah.
It's gradual, but nonetheless, all of our expectations, our hopes are kind of crystallizing on that date. Yeah. And so, even as I say, even if it purely only works on the level of a magical incantation, it has enormous power, and it's being charged every minute of the time that we're talking about this stuff.
That's right.
It's being charged up right now. So I find that really quite an exciting. I find that quite a hopeful thing. And here's the point that I was talking about Britney Spears and this overshadowing of the M. This is what I'm trying to talk about. This is what I mean about how rather than us intuitively being guided ourselves, external forces are trying to control our agenda, our future. And it's important that we shake off the M in the same way that Brittany needs to shake off the M, in the same way I looked at it on some of my other articles too. And here's the point. It's no coincidence that in 2012, apart from anything, I'm sure there will be a whole host of global sort of pageants sort of to excite our senses.
Sure.
But the important thing about that is it has to be kind of rejected as simply an attempt sort of to control sort of this unfolding.
Mm-hmm.
It has to run its own course, and it is ultimately uncontrollable.
And this, what do you think that powers that be are freaked out by this? That this is something uncontrollable?
Well, earlier I spoke about how I feel that this is largely unconscious. This is something which is being played out according to an ancient archetype.
Yeah.
And so again, I do not seriously believe that members, for example, Gordon Brown, lies in bed, frightening himself over 2012 and trying to dream up ways of
stopping this.
precisely.
Yeah.
I don't think that is not the way politics work. That's not the way Gordon Brown works.
No.
I'm not a great fan, but that's not what he does. I don't, and that's not the way Tony Blair operated either. Although he's more suspect.
Well, I mean, that's quite interesting though, because I mean, he and his wife, of course, Sherry was.
Yes.
I mean, they have
precisely.
been down on some.
Yes.
Mayan rebirthing rituals.
And speaking of someone else, and actually this is something which I said in my last interview, and actually Greg edited this out, but I'll say it again because I'm not ashamed of the fact that actually I'm a royalist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Prince Charles, for example, represents something which is very Aquarian, very, very positive. I don't believe that he's dreaming up ways of trying to dominate us, stamp on 2012. Sort of stamp his own particular, network on that phenomenon. But nonetheless, it happens in spite of his best intentions. It happens in spite of Brown's best intentions, Blair's best intentions, and so forth. It's this thing, and it's a very hard thing to explain, but it's something which we need to shake off. And the only way that we can do that is if we sort of get back in touch with our goddess. And again, this is not these external notions of what that should represent, Mary or anything else, or anything occult or pagan or Wiccan. It's much more simple than that, my friend. And this is what I was talking about right at the very start of the interview. It's just about using your intuition and making connections and getting back in touch. Or actually sparking up your infinite genius. So, and if you can, and actually this is something which David Icke, of course, has said many times. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here listening.
Sorry, I thought maybe we'd lost it. If I can take my hat off to Icke, because he's been saying this for a long time. If we can just tap into our infinite genius and believe it, humbly, I would submit it's not that difficult to do. If we can do that, then it makes us uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And I would try and exhort everybody listening that we need to get out of control.
I see what you're saying in a way, and also, of course, this necessarily, if I read it correct, doesn't have to mean that we have to go, haywire on the streets or whatever.
Absolutely nothing to do. I think that would be the worst thing to do. I mean, here's a great example. I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is a wonderful. This is another example of the M that they offer us. Okay, M is the principle of false reality. It's that kind of like false notions of spiritual sort of release. Here's an example that they offer us. Well, all you need to do to be free and to tap into your infinite genius, you just need to go to Glastonbury Festival and take lots of pills. And I quite like doing that myself, but that's by the by. But and get off your face and dance around and slide in the mud and listen to like Pete Doherty, and that means you're going to be free forever now, and that's rock and roll. And that's a classic example of how they always have their get-out clauses. And we need to identify all those get-out. It doesn't mean we don't go to Glastonbury, but it just means we go with a totally different spirit. And realise that actually, if we're about freeing ourselves, it isn't as simple. in some ways it's even easier than just taking a few pills and drinking Guinness.
Sure.
And dancing in front of a giant pyramid like they have down there at Glastonbury. Which isn't that phenomenal?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, look at that. It's staring you right in your friggin' face. And it's not only a pyramid, but it's a pyramid which actually has a shiny, illuminated capstone on top.
That's right. Yeah, wonderful.
Isn't it beautiful? And here we are, thousands of us, dancing and giving our spiritual respect to it. And that's something Matthew Deleuze is really good on, if you read his new book. That's right.
He's able to pick that up and see that. And the question, again, that comes back to my mind is I mean, maybe not so much, okay, is this good or is this bad or whatever, but
right, yeah.
But when we are, as Matthew talked about, when we are participating in this unconsciously, what is going on there? Who's the
benefiting?
Energy? Who's benefiting? That's right. Yeah, exactly.
And here is an important point which I mentioned to Greg in my podcast, last time. But here we have Glastonbury Festival, which should in itself be the beacon of freedom, shouldn't it? Like there it is. It's rock and roll. It's something which you don't want your parents to find out about. It's scary. It's dangerous, etc. But everybody who attended that festival now, and I believe there were 165,000 revelers there, my friend.
Really?
At the summer solstice this year.
Mm-hmm.
All of them had RFID photographs, ID cards, simply to get on the camp. Simply to get on site. They had to have their ID. They had to show their ID cards. Now here you're taking impressionable, largely young people, but actually increasingly it's middle class professionals. I mean, I tell you what, I'd love to have gone to Glastonbury, although I wouldn't have wanted the ID crap. But
sure.
I couldn't possibly afford to go.
Yeah.
I'm priced out.
Yeah.
It is no longer, and probably never was, a working class or a sort of a mass festival.
Sure.
Nowadays, particularly, certainly in the last 10 years, it's been for largely young, middle-class professionals who go to Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it costs a lot of money.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, as you say, it costs a lot of money and really expensive. So not really expensive, but it's more money than I could afford to spend in a weekend, let's say. But sure.
But what I find so interesting is that here's Glastonbury, which is meant to be, and it is. This is the scary thing. It's an example of the new age coming, new age dawning. It's meant to be. It's meant to offer something of the vanguard of society.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it does, it's not a society that I particularly want to be a part of. Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, it's a classic. It's actually a classic. It's a classic scam on so many levels. Here we have highly privileged members of the priesthood who are on stage, providing entertainment for serfs. They are paid phenomenal amounts of money and have lifestyles that we could not possibly aspire to, and we are lapping it up and paying for the privilege.
Exactly.
We are actually supporting these parasites.
That's right.
And it's time, we realise that people like Madonna, people like Posh Spice, should not be allowed to emerge and to take control of the agenda how they have. As soon as egos like that begin to appear, we need to stamp on them, not physically, obviously, simply by retreating our respect and our spiritual energy from those people and placing it elsewhere.